And class is in session. You're listening to Shit Shooting 101. I'm your host, Joshua Lee. Joining us today, three fan favorites, torchbearers, spotlight operators, administrators of truth, information agents, uncontrollable opposition, the guardian angels on our shoulders, here to open eyes, minds, hearts, vaults, and cans of whoop-ass. It's Julianne Romanello. Julianne, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh.
Nice to have you here. Cindy Niles, welcome to the show.
Hello, Josh.
Nice to have you here. And Mark Petrakis.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks.
Welcome everybody. The gang's all here. So three of my favorite guests ever, three of my favorite people. I consider you all friends and glad to have you here. It's been a long time coming. So welcome everybody.
Quite an accomplishment. Yeah, good for you.
I hate to start the podcast off on a sad note, but unfortunately, the Truth Tribe recently lost a very powerful and integral soul in Niki Raapana. Now, I know she made an impact on all three of you, so in honor of her, I'd like to begin this podcast by allowing each of you to express whatever you wish to say in her memory, and please go on to explain how you have noticed communitarianism creeping into your community. Cindy, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Josh. Niki made a very large impact on my entire mindset regarding the New World Order and Agenda 21. By giving me a framework to work with, some major pillars regarding how it all ties together with not just politics, but the real driving forces behind religion, ideology, and the philosophy of the New World Order resetters. I've recently picked up a book by Amitai Etzioni, which was written in the early 2000s, and just within the first few pages, he literally uses the phrase New World Order, I don't know how many times, and references, the community and all the neuro-linguistic programming that we've been hearing, the buzzword that Julianne refers to all the time. And it seems to make sense of the Fabianism, communism, socialism, capitalism. It really ties everything together. So, and I was talking to another friend yesterday, her name is Melissa. She has a big page on Facebook, and we were discussing, the differences between Fabianism and Leninism, and what's just every time I learn more about any concept that has to do with the New World Order, I always see the flavor of communitarianism in there, and I suppose the flavor of Fabianism is the the wolf in the sheep's clothing, and how all these buzzwords have just dressed it up. Now, regarding your other question about how do you see it in your community, or how do you see it in your locality, it's insane, actually, because everywhere I turn, there it is. We have local councils, we have local government here in Australia, which is basically illegal. We had a referendum about 30 years ago, which addressed the question, do Australians want a local council, a third tier of government? And the people said no. And yet we still have this infiltration, and these local governments are fining us, that they are policing us. They're making money. They're making a lot of money, and they're doing a lot. They're dishing out a lot of punishment. And I was lucky enough to have first-hand experience of this only a few weeks ago, and I received an infringement for parking for too long, and the infringement was overdue because I didn't pay it. And at the bottom it says community law officer. So I actually called the council asking to speak to the community law officer, and they were like, oh, why, you know, is there something wrong with the parking fine? And I said, well, no, I'm not saying I wasn't parked there, and I'm not saying I wasn't parked there for more than an hour. I was actually, you know, just shopping for, you know, an outfit for my grandmother's, you know, funeral, by the way. And I left $400 in that main street, which has lost a lot of businesses. And I want you to explain to me the rationale of how this has something to do with the community, how you're helping the community when you're punishing me and deterring me from shopping in the main street. And moreover, I had gone onto the internet and had found that there is an organization called Main Street Australia, which is all about saving the high streets and the local businesses. And lo and behold, my shire is on that list. And it, you know, on the first page of their website, it talks about, you know, bringing to life the community and small and medium-sized businesses. And I persisted in asking, who is the community that they're serving? Because they certainly aren't serving me, and they're not serving the businesses, because, mind you, I don't live in a city where there isn't an issue with parking. There is no issue with parking. That street is always empty. When I got back to my car, 90% of the car spaces were empty, and that has been the case ever since I've lived here, and that's going on to 2 years now. So of course I didn't get any good answers. All I got was, oh, this is the policy, and you know, I basically just got a lot of shut doors. I don't know if I have the energy to pursue it anymore, but yes, this communitarianism, this law enforcement at this level, always talking about serving the community. And the question is, which definition of community in the dictionary should I be looking? Because I got to that point where I looked at the dictionary to see, could it be that they're referring to a bunch of corporate organizations? Because when I looked into the council, I found it referenced under business on Google. And it even told me their sales last year. So they don't talk about revenue, they quote in sales. And the woman that I spoke to on the phone, the senior community law officer, said to me that basically they collect revenue for the state. And it's like, okay, so basically they're a private corporation extracting money from regional areas or from all over Australia and giving it to the state government, which is then redistributing it. In other words, communism, collectivism, equity, whatever. So that is not community, in my opinion. I'm sorry, I talked a little bit too long there.
Same question to you, Julianne.
Oh, man, well, now it's complicated because I'm writing all of these notes about what Cindy said. Yeah, so, I mean, I almost feel like I happened upon Niki's work by accident. And, you know, I just started reading a couple of her posts. I think she had commented on maybe, I forget whose, maybe it was Alison McDowell's post or something, but I saw that Niki had these very intelligent comments, and I had never heard of her before, but I added her as a friend and sent her a note and said, you know, you're really talking about some wonderful things, and, you know, I want to be connected and share information if that's all right. And then I found out who she was, and I was just amazed that she has such a grasp of the totality of what was going on. Like Cindy said, she understood the religious aspect of it of the New World Order. She understood the political aspect. She understood how it operated in the law and at the very concrete level of her community. And then she could extrapolate and show these much larger trends that went back through history and through into like pragmatic history and then also intellectual history. So, you know, just reading her work and looking at her comments, I was really blown away. And, you know, I had come across this term communitarianism in, you know, in classes in graduate school. I read a book by the US Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, and he's a communitarian and talks about it. And I had bumped into this word, but I had never thought of the significance of it until I found her work. And she did bring together so many different strands of thought that it really just, it clarifies the whole of what's going on. And she was an hilarious person. I mean, I didn't get to speak with her one-on-one very much. I had one conversation where we talked for 3 hours and we had to really pull each other off the phone. You know, I'm like running away from my kids, saying, you know, sort of shooing them just that I could keep talking to her because she was so authentic. She was so real and gritty, and I don't know, just a strong, wonderful woman whose work was unappreciated in her lifetime. I mean, I think the people who followed her really were loyal to her and understood like the amount of sacrifice she made to produce this very, very important contribution to our understanding of reality. But, you know, besides that small group, you know, there aren't too many other people, certainly not academics, who were talking about what she gave to us. And like Cindy said, I mean, Amitai Etzion's work is so important, and I would not have encountered him if I hadn't heard of him from Niki. And I bought, I think, 3 of his books, and it lays out this program perfectly. So everyone should be reading these books, and she's been trying to convince people of that. And I hope that in the coming months, you know, maybe, you know, you hate to say this, but maybe the publicity that her tragic passing has brought to her work, maybe that will open up some doors. And I don't know, my heart just goes out to Nordica because I know Niki was a rock, and no one wants to lose their mom, right? And especially, you know, I can just imagine what Niki was like as a grandmother and a mother. So I'll always feel indebted to her, and really, I don't know, it really feels like she's still here. Maybe I'm in denial. But, you know, we will preserve her memory because I think that's really a key part of fighting this battle that we're in.
All right, Mark.
She was such I mean, it took me a while to figure out that this woman who was a frontier woman and was building houses had this history, you know, and that it was as old as it was, and that the concept of communitarianism was as old as it was, and that it has been a regular, reoccurring battle that occurs. And then you realize too, and this is what I realized, was just like, it's always a war about words, and certain time frames map to those words. So like I probably la-di-da'd through life for 20 years and never really heard communitarianism, right? It was another ism, you know, and I already predisposed to like look skeptically on isms as it is. But the notion then of all of a sudden, it was like some, you know, some mechanical dude pressed a button and said, now you're going to talk about communitarianism. Why are we going to talk? Because it's tied to the common good, you idiot, you know, and that's what's up right now. That's the agenda right now. That's what we have to talk about right now. We go, well, kind of like the common good, you know, I mean, it's not a bad idea. But then when that becomes weaponized, which is, you know, what happens with language, so the common good becomes weaponized, then now we're all in a pinch, right? We're all kind of, you know, looking around at the masses around us who feel like, you know, this applies to, you know, race and gender and sexuality and all this sort of stuff, the common good. Like, how is whatever you want to do about the common good if it doesn't include my own experience, right? My own individuality. Now I'm an individuality guy, right? You know, so I'm not a believer in theory over experience. I prefer experience. I prefer my own individual experience of life. And so I think that in a sense, you know, this is what we're fighting for. We're fighting for the integrity of the individual and in the face of any system. So communitarianism is a gnarly big system, and the common good has like compressed on us really quickly. I don't think it was around before. And I think that's because it was too much associated with communism and socialism and these negative things we would never have in this country. Well, of course, we know that the agenda is to do that exactly. Just change the words around so people don't understand that this is, you know, this is the same as happening in China, or that our social credit system will be somehow more democratic than the Chinese social credit system. These are the kind of delusions that we live under. And if we don't, you know, sort of break it in some way, I don't know, but, you know, you kind of need a sledgehammer sometimes to keep yourself free. As far as, you know, so I'll just wrap it up there. But as far as Niki goes, she was a like really amazing personality. I wish I had gotten to talk to her, but she was clearly a noble and visionary human being, and we will miss her.
Well said, guys. So Mark, you were talking about the power of language and how they weaponize it. That brings me to this question here, and I'm going to take a weird way to get to it, but please stay tuned. I'll get there eventually. Sammy Davis Jr., a proud, outspoken member of the Church of Satan, had an album called If I Ruled the World. The 11th and last song was titled Yes, I Can. This became the title of his autobiography as well, Yes, I Can, published in 1965. 44 years later, Obama takes office as the 44th president of the United States of America, led by the chant of Yes, We Can, which when played backwards says, Thank you, Satan. Now, Obama is highly trained in neurolinguistic programming. Since language is so extremely important in shaping thoughts and actions, can you explain to us NLP in simple terms, how it's applied, and provide examples, Julianne?
Yeah, you know, I really came across the significance of NLP in looking at some of the talks given by Brian Garish, who is an English former naval officer of the British Army, and now he's a sort of truth activist. And he's the editor at the UK column. He's an editor. I think he founded it too. But I can't even remember how I got there, but I happened upon a couple of his talks about what I would call collective impact. And that is this major strategy of aligning language, aligning goals, aligning units of measurement, and really throughout every organization in a given city or a community, okay? So, and I had been interested in this collective impact model because it's related to impact investing, which is something that I've looked at a lot. And also, I wanted to be able to explain to friends, to people on Facebook, how a plan this extensive and this coordinated could possibly happen. Everyone says, well, that's just nuts. There's no way that everyone could be doing the same thing at the same time. So I wanted to be able to explain it. And the concept of collective impact does that. And there are many articles about it in like the Stanford Social Innovation Review. But what Brian Garish did was he talked about how that model worked, and he didn't use that term, but he was talking about an organization in England, and I forget the city, that he ran across, and it was called Our Common Purpose, which goes hand in hand with communitarianism, right? And he explained how this group on Common Purpose would stack the boards of businesses and corporations in a locality. It would stack the governmental boards. They would groom people from youth on to speak the language that is favored by the agenda, and to parrot the goals that are touted by the agenda. And I thought he just made some of these connections very clear and in a concrete way. So, I wanted to know more about his, what he had to say about that type of activity and that coordination of effort. And then I ran across an interview that he gave where he talked about NLP, Neuro-linguistic Programming. And he actually did a demonstration about how it works. And he said there are these certain gestures that are made over and over again. There are certain phrases that are likely to cause an emotional result that will make you more open to suggestion or manipulation, as the case may be. And he talked about how it goes back to a military model of basically psychological control. And when I heard him talk about that, I thought this absolutely makes sense of everything that I had noticed about the buzzwords, and I say this probably in every interview or talk that I give, so I apologize for the repetition, but I think it is so important to note, like, when you look at a pamphlet, when you look at an advertisement, when you look at, say, corporate strategy or university strategy or any of these kinds of documents that are going to be produced by some hired consultant, every other word is the same. It flows the same way. They have the same templates over and over and over again. And to me, that stands out. Like, this doesn't make sense that human beings with diverse experiences would use the same model over and over again. Well, when you consider this concept of neuro-linguistic programming, I think that it does make sense, and when you consider how neuro-linguistic programming works in the context of collective impact, which grooms young people and it targets specific personality types through leadership institutes that do behavioral and psychological profiling, then it makes sense. You can see everyone's going to be using the same language because what they have been exposed to, what they have been programmed to parrot back, it's all the same garbage. So, Cindy did a really cool post where she showed one of the graphics, and this is a graphic that is, again, you can see it in pamphlets for any number of things. And, there's a cluster of words, and some of them are larger and some are medium-sized and small. And I hadn't thought about that particular type of graphic being an example of this neuro-linguistic programming, but it's something Cindy put together. Yes, this is why they do that, you know? So I think if people would pay more attention to this, I beg your forgiveness for going on too long here, but if people would pay attention to that repetition and that pattern and understand how it works from a very young age, and it works in all sectors of society, nonprofit, corporate, government, everything, then maybe they would start to say, hey, why is this? Why are we all saying the same things and doing the same things? And I hope that that might be what would, shake people out of their slumber, but we'll see, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Cindy, you want to take that?
Sure. Where do I start? Okay, so Neuro-linguistic programming. I came across an excellent video just last week, which was put together, I presume, in the early 90s with material from the 80s. There is a man called Norman Dodd in that video and a woman called Charlotte Isabert. I don't remember the other speakers. Norman Dodd was commissioned in by the American government, I suppose, or the Senate, or some large authoritative body to decide if the American education system was unconstitutional, and this project, this study, basically revealed that it was. So we are going back many, many decades of something called outcomes-based education, which was essentially the indoctrination that we talk about very loosely today. Somebody says, oh, what's school? Oh, it's an indoctrination camp. The question is, how exactly did it happen? When did it happen? Who did it? Now, those are too many questions to answer at this point. But if I'm just to go on outcomes-based education, is what it was called in America. In the UK and in the British colonies, we might call it problem-based learning or purpose-based learning or project-based learning. What the object of these learning programs is to present problems and have the objective of students arriving at the politically correct answer. So instead of arriving at the rational answer through reasoning and showing, how we used to show our working out for mathematics, like if you just put the answer there, your teacher would go, oh, that's just the answer. I need to see your working out to know that you know how to do this problem. Well, if we apply that to all the other subjects which aren't mathematics, that working out that you need to show is that you acquired the correct neuro-linguistic programming. For example, if you write, this is a boon to the community, that is big marks. That is politically correct speech. Or if you say it's for the greater good, or it will create more equity or equitability or equality or fairness, or this is good for the environment, it's environmentally friendly. These are all buzzwords, catchwords that come from outcomes-based education. Now, I want to give a really good example that I just came across. I'm not sure if I completed that thought, but my mind is jumping around. Now, the Australian ambassador. So here's a really good, this is an exemplar of jargon, of newspeak is what George Orwell would have called it, or catchphrases. Let me say it. She says, The consequences of climate change can exacerbate the risk of sexual and gender-based violence, especially those facing intersecting forms of discrimination, including Indigenous women and girls. Listen to Australia's HRC 50 annual statement discussion on women's rights. Now, if anybody can actually make sense of what was said there, they really deserve a prize. The point being,
I was going to ask, was that in English?
That's real. That's not a meme. I actually, I went to the thesaurus dictionary to try and find a word that accurately describes what she said, because I actually couldn't wrap my mind around it. There was no sound reasoning. There was no logic in what was being said. There was no explanation. All it was a bunch of catchphrases thrown together. And, is it unintelligible? Is it obscure? Is it cryptic? Is it enigmatic? Is it perplexing? It's all of those things. But that doesn't matter, because all of these last few generations at these indoctrination camps, these schools, have been taught that is the politically correct thing to say. And therefore, even if you don't understand it, it's acceptable because it's the right thing to say. And unfortunately, this is what's happening in the schools, and this is what normal people actually do speak in their everyday lives. For example, we had a lady come here yesterday. Yes, she's actually an electrician. She's older. She's like 60 plus, and we were discussing, changing some of the what are they called? Where you put the light bulbs in anyway. And I said, will we be able to put halogen in those? And she said, oh, no, those are really bad. They're bad for the environment. She used a bunch of catchphrases and words regarding environmentally friendly light bulbs and economic light bulbs and so on and so forth regarding to LED lights. Now, she hasn't done her homework, but she's still using the catchphrases as though they are the word of God. She could have known better should she have looked into it, but she really didn't, and so I left the discussion. But it goes so deep. I won't continue too much. I'll leave it at that. But unfortunately, this neuro-linguistic programming, it is everywhere. It's incessant. If you hear it enough, who said it? Was it Goebbels that said it? Say a lie, say it big enough, say it often enough, and it just becomes the truth. And there's no room left in our brains for anything else at the end of the day. Sometimes I feel like, so much information is coming in that it's pushing out all the logical things I know. And I assume people that aren't looking at what's happening critically or don't realize something very underhanded is happening, it's just acceptable. That's just the way it is. That's the modern contemporary progress, the inevitability. I'm using jargon to explain the jargon. I'm sorry, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
No, truly appreciated. Mark, anything to add?
Yeah. When in the 1970s, I was living in Chicago, and I was kind of an itinerant actor, and I got caught up in meditation, and so I got, I was doing a mime class and with this lady who worked out here with the United Prisoners Union and with the mime troupe, and I thought, oh, she's cool. She said, if you come to San Francisco, I'll give you free classes. So I put that together with the meditation thing, and I realized I couldn't keep living the life I was living because, all my friends were drinkers and we'd go to the bars and, so I came out here and I, mingled into that new age crowd, and I have figured out how to swim in it. It was interesting, and it was beautiful and sweet. We had a natural foods restaurant on Union Street in 1974, which is pretty ahead of its time. But then I gradually got into body work, and my friends were doing body work. And there was this incredible menu that existed at the time, the cultural menu of that era, post-psychedelic era, New Age, early New Age era. And there were all these different things, Rolfing and different kinds of, postural integration, Reichian work, all these different amazing things. But neuro-linguistic programming was one on the menu. But for some reason, I was more interested in the body-oriented approach. I just liked that. But I could see that it was there and that it was being referred to by all the people who were talking at the time, the Esalen people and the Est people. And they would all come to the restaurant that we had because they were all on Union Street. And it's sort of like when Julianne was talking, it was like, this is how it works, guys. You go into a room for a weekend with a whole bunch of people, and you come out and your vocabulary is totally changed. And you get on the phone and you call a friend because you have broken some connection with them. And now you are obligated to go back and recreate the connection and to walk them through your paces. And, it's sort of like, it's very powerful. The power of spells, the power of words that need to be repeated. That excerpt that you read, Cindy, it's like, it's not supposed to be understood. It's supposed to be revered. It's supposed to be acknowledged as having some authority on the subject. Well, this authority thing is what's screwing us up big time, right? We defer. Somebody, like your guru, like there were gurus all over the place in that period of time. And there were all these, and everybody was taking advantage of everybody else because under the guise of, well, it's for your spirit. There was so much horse shit going on. You couldn't really navigate through it. You had to sort of draw the line. And that's where meditation was good, because if you do 2 hours of meditation a day, it's pretty good bullshit detector. You don't get drawn in so easily to some horse shit, which is really common. I mean, up and down Union Street, it was like Dodge City of the New Age, right? Everybody had some rap they were going on. So I think it's important to keep coming back to language and to how language is used and to what purpose language is used. And in the case of, there's certainly some basis in science and reality for, the effects of neurolinguistic programming. But this is something else which, lately I've been re-encountering my, kind of gullibility in that period. And, Est and Eckankar and Esalen and all these guys. And I know Cindy doesn't want to talk about Tavistock, but in actual fact, a lot of that, that priming was being done on a whole, you guys are too young to be there, but I'm telling you, priming was going on everywhere, especially in San Francisco in the late 70s. So, you came out of there with what I call, the tyranny of positivity. I think this is where we started with everybody's groovy. Everything's got to be groovy, right? You can't be really critical of somebody. You have to just be accepting of them. Well, this is where we begin to move down that communitarian road, right? It's sort of like, I can't really express my opinions. Well, it's not really an intellectual crowd, so I best be just kind of pulled in the back and not really express my ideas, So we get into this everything's groovy kind of thing. And I think it's still here. All those years later, 40 years later, we're still under the toxicity of, the controls on language. I like to call it namaste unconsciousness, but, that's the kind of thing. So it was set for us in the New Age, and we're still living in the after effects of it. So that's good.
Can I add something?
Yes, please.
Sorry, Mark, were you finished?
Yes.
So I said don't ask me about Tavistock because I didn't do my homework. Not that I don't want to talk about Tavistock. What I do know is that the Club of Rome is informed by Tavistock. Okay, so but just to come to something that you said, this jargon that we talk about, what I hadn't really understood until I encountered an assignment that was tasked to 13-year-olds in a Western Australian school. So somebody sent a screenshot of an assignment. And now I remember school quite well. I may not remember what I ate yesterday, but I remember when I was 13 and the subjects that we had. And there's now a subject called the Australian Civics and Citizenship Curriculum, which starts in the first year of high school. And so I looked at that, and basically it was to the children had to make, or the adolescents had to make a poster about changing the law and what should be done, and during a pandemic, and should we encourage everybody to be vaccinated? Should we mandate something like this? Should everybody be locked down? And so it caught me off guard. I did not realize until I actually looked at the .gov website and looked at the curriculum for the Australian Civics and Citizenship Curriculum, and discovered what they were learning. And what they were learning was things they couldn't possibly understand or learn at that age. Where I want to conclude is that they're getting children really, really young, and giving them the impression that they are learning something. So this course includes the Constitution, the separation of powers, what the Governor General does, how a referendum can change the Constitution. Now, I'm 45. I've been, politically minded for more than, for nearly 2 decades. And I can tell you, I struggle with these concepts still to this day. And yet, here they're telling me that 13-year-olds have a grasp on these ideas, to the point where, they can even do a mock referendum on how to change the Constitution. And unfortunately, I think the result is that we are going to have, in 10 years' time, a generation of young adults who say, oh, constitutional matters, law reform, we did that when we were babies, just in year 7. Oh, yeah, we learned that when we were 13 and 14. And I'm afraid that they're going to change. They're going to go all the way. They're going to conclude what has started now. So if you ask me, what's happening now in society is actually unlawful and illegal according to our constitutions. And people trying to take these things to court are basically having the can kicked down the road. Judges aren't ruling. They're not presiding over the issues. They're just sort of keeping them at bay until something else, I don't know, until they can make it legal and lawful what they're doing. And so really what's happening is that kids and people in general are given the impression that they know something, that they understand it, when really they don't, when really all they've been given is jargon. So I just really wanted to mention that. I think it's very important for us to know how, what are the mechanics behind this this false sense of understanding that we see in society, or why amongst each other we keep asking, why can't they see? Why can't they see? And I think we need an answer. And I feel like I've kind of stumbled onto it with this outcomes-based learning, neuro-linguistic programming, and this indoctrination in this video. and then the work of Charlotte Isabert, who wrote the book called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. And in brackets, you know, I'm adding, and all the other, and the rest of the West, and all the other OECD countries. So, and I really thank Mark for putting it into actual, you know, words that mean something a little bit more. I really appreciated that, Mark. And I'm sure, I think Julianne's probably got a lot more to say on this.
Can I jump in for a minute, Julianne?
Sure.
Because it seems to me, and I don't want to skip tracks here too much, but that what you're describing in general is a kind of, like you say, a kind of dumbing down of the culture. Well, this is what's been going on for decades, right? So, you know, more TV, bad food, blah, 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 you know, broken families, all the things that we reference, you know, in terms of the collapse of Western civilization. But this idea then of something at a certain point, this entity called the population, the people, the ones that we see, the people that work at Safeway, they are under incredible attack every single day of their life. And of course, they normalize that attack, so it's not painful, you know, in the most immediate sense, but it has the effect ultimately of, you know, degrading their experience, degrading their thinking, so that, you know, ultimately, and I see this with friends, intelligent friends, you know, that they just basically can't talk about this stuff. They can't get into a discussion about this stuff. It's like literally they're like been hypnotized that if they touch a concept, you know, it'll send a jolt through their body. And so, how do I do this without thinking? Well, it's not easy, you know, you can't really, it's really tough to do. So I think that you got to go back again, for me anyway, to just go, this is part of the program. If I'm a machine, I don't need my own thoughts. You just put them in there and I'll go about my business, you know. If I'm a human, then I've got all this responsibility, complexity, loneliness, alienation. I'm all by myself. Nobody knows, nobody cares, you know. But if I'm a machine, then I can just get in with the team. I can be a soccer player. I could be whatever, you know, because I'm just doing my part. I'm just doing my part. I kick the ball and kick that over. Kick the ball, kick it up. You know, it's like, that's what a machine does. That's what we're fighting against. In my view, this is my view, the larger picture is like, this is all moving in one direction, and it's all moving in AI. It's all moving in that direction. So, you know, I think we guys have talked, I've talked before about my propaganda operating system idea, but recently, and it was actually when you were talking, Julianne, on an interview with the disobedient guy, and just had this little flash and go, wealth is a technology, wealth is an AI, you know, power is a technology, power is an AI. They're running the power, wealth, and information programs. And we're just getting it and getting it. We try to defend ourselves against it, but they're too big, they're too strong. And unless you have like really solid support, you know, I think we have good solid support here for venturing out on the, you know, on the edge and trying to grasp at truth when we know there's dangers associated with it. And we haven't even gotten into that part of our reality yet, where, you know, every thought we have and every word we say, you know, and how we talk to our children is all being mapped and tracked and, you know, and put into our credit scores. But I'm just saying that that's the fight as I see it, is to fight the AI, is to fight, because I know what it wants. It wants us to be predictable and programmable. And so, you know, and the various things you were unpacking there, both of you, that were really cool, they do have that kind of ultimate ending, which is that we're more predictable, more programmable. We don't think for ourselves, and we think as we're supposed to think.
Yeah, well, I'll jump in if it's okay, weigh in on some of these comments. So, oh man, there's so much there. I mean, I think maybe just to back into some of these comments, you know, thinking about this effort to turn human beings into predictable machines. I mean, that's exactly what Cindy is describing with the outcomes-based education, where you're just supposed to produce the right language at the end of some examination, right? I mean, that's how a computer program works, right? I mean, as far as I know, I'm sort of computer illiterate, but, you put in inputs and then the outputs just naturally follow, right? And that is the sign of a good program. So all of this education that's been going on for decades, it's just about programming people. And I think, it does separate us from our experience, and maybe the most important aspect of that experience, as I see it, is the reality that I think imperfection, maybe I've said this in another interview, I can't remember, imperfection does make sense to us. The human condition, I think, is complex. It's intelligible to a certain point, but there are always going to be these larger forces that we wrestle with and that we cannot penetrate or elucidate or illuminate fully, right? And in a very fundamental, basic sense, I think that does make sense to us. The idea of this, super positivity that comes with neuro-linguistic programming, like I can talk myself into a better life. Well, I've always thought that was ridiculous. I mean, it wouldn't work for me because I would argue with myself. But really at a fundamental level, like human beings are more complex than that. Like our will and our intellect and our spiritedness and our bodies, they work together to a certain extent, but then they also pull us in these different directions that prevent us from just being able to have this easy solution of talking ourselves into a better life, right? And I don't know, I mean, I've always been a little bit skeptical of people who are so positive. And, I know I've been criticized in my Facebook. I know Cindy's been criticized, probably Josh and Mark, you guys have too, for, being so negative. Well, to me, it doesn't seem negative because what we're trying to do is explain what's actually going on. And that's supposed to open people up to this reality that actually does make sense to us, and it engages our reason rather than just produce these fine phrases that are meaningless. And it also, it is empowering, I think, to the people who read it. I think that a lot of people appreciate having this knowledge, and they don't want it sugar coated because we're at the end stages of this terrible program. So no one has the time, not serious people don't have the time to try to, scrape off the sugar coating and get to the meat of it. They actually want the meat of it. And I think that's what Cindy does so well. I think that's what, well, I would say everyone in this group does that very well. And people will criticize that and they'll say, oh, you're being negative. Well, no, it's not negative. It's actually realistic. And I think you have to have a very, you have to have a very stable sense of character and integrity to be able to look at what is actually happening and talk about it without trying to convince yourself that it's not as bad as it really is, right? I think, and so, a lot of times I'll say that even after looking at this stuff day after day for several years, it still is shocking to me, right? And in a way, that doesn't make sense. I shouldn't be shocked anymore. Like I read the white papers all the time, but it's still shocking. And so, there's that paradox of knowing it, but not knowing it. And I think that's really what it is to be human. Machines can't deal with that. They can't hold together those two things of knowing, but still being shocked and in disbelief. And so, you can look at that type of paradox and be offended by it and say, I want to collapse it. And I'm thinking of Kierkegaard. I love Kierkegaard. I'm drawing on his terms. You can think, I want to collapse this paradox and make sense of it. But really that is the libido dominandi. That's the effort. That's the will to power to try to force reality into a tiny box that we want it to be in because it's more manageable to us. What I think we need to do as human beings is look at that paradox and embrace it. Like, that's where we're going to really discover who we are, what we owe other people, what is this whole that we live in. And we need to say, yeah, I'm not going to understand it all the way, but that is what preserves the quest. That's what preserves our ability to continue on as human beings rather than automatons. So I think we have to really combat this tyranny of positivity because, people are looking for palliatives. People are so depressed and they're so anxious and they are suffering under all of these attacks and assaults. So, they haven't, for whatever reason, they haven't developed or discovered within themselves the fortitude to be able to withstand those attacks without a sort of medication. And I think this positivity talk is just, it's another form of medication. And I think we're going to have to combat that because if you really want to deal with what we're going through, you have to get off the meds, right? And then just sort of the last thing that I might add to some of the comments that you all brought up, trying to get these 13-year-olds, I think Cindy's point about these concepts being very difficult concepts that are being taught as if they're black and white, easy to grasp concepts. And she was talking about the, separation of powers and constitutionalism and those sort of basic concrete things. We live in a time of great flattery where everyone is being flattered, especially youth. And I mean, this is an age-old problem that goes back to, I can go back to Plato and the Sophists. And the Sophists were these foreign teachers of virtue who came into Athens and said, yeah, you want to raise successful young men in a democratic regime. Well, we can teach your young men how to be virtuous for a small fee. And what did they do? They taught them all of these rhetorical techniques and how to manipulate words and how to make the weaker argument the stronger. I mean, this goes back to, it goes back even before then, but this goes back to ancient Greece, right? And that's why they're not teaching it in schools, I think. But we are in a terrible habit of flattering youth and trying to say that this naivete that goes with youth, which actually we're destroying with all this transgender over-sexualization and, this kind of BS. You have adults who are pandering to young people who lack the experience that helps them understand the paradoxes of life. And you have all of these adults and teachers especially and healthcare providers. And then I'm sure, the people who teach these sort of new agey movements, they look at young people as this sort of pure, perfected state. And they look at growing older and the experience that we get through life as a sort of corruption. And I would say that that's backwards, right? I mean, there are things that I learned from my children who, you know, my oldest is about to turn 11. And, you know, they do have these very pure insights sometimes. And you can just look at these beautiful, innocent young children and think, wow, you know, they understand this better than I could have because I've been distracted. I think that is a real thing, but those are exceptions. And we have just moved into an age where we want instant beauty, we want simplicity, we want malleability and getting along and niceness at the expense of, like you say, truth and reality. So, you know, we have, as a culture, we have accepted this flattery of youth, which doesn't make any sense. And that has blinded us to this grooming agenda that's going on by the social controllers, you know, and that's really what I thought, that collective impact paradigm. It shows you how that grooming works itself out concretely. You know, you tell these 13-year-olds, you're going to change the world. Oh, you're 13. You can go into a poor, underserved community and you can volunteer and you can change the world. Well, isn't that presumptuous? I mean, to tell these young, inexperienced people, like, you can go in to help poor kids and their lives are going to be better because you're in there doing whatever somebody's told you to do. I mean, I saw this with college age students. You know, they push the community service and the volunteering so hard that they'll tell well-to-do, you know, thoughtful young people, well, you need to go into these underserved neighborhoods and you can make them better. And there's never a question about, do these young privileged college students, do they really have the understanding of the situation that's happening in underserved neighborhoods? Do they understand what's going on there? Do they understand who they are as human beings to be able to bring something to the table? I mean, you know, it's all just thrown together without really considering how much experience we do need. And, you know, I know I've gone on for too long, but this has been something that's been nagging at me. You know, the entire reset discourse is based on, you know, this idea that if we have prosperity for all, if we raise everyone's economic situation, that life is going to be great. Well, how many rich white people are miserable and living depraved lives, you know, even more so than, let's say, some poor minority person? I mean, having a better economic status doesn't make you happier. It doesn't give you a greater understanding of the world. In fact, I know a lot of people who grew up poor. I actually grew up poor. And I think they're better able to cope with the vicissitudes of life. They have a more accurate understanding of what's going on. They're more generous and, I think, compassionate. And, you know, we're just not even asking those questions. Like, is helping someone's socioeconomic status going to do any good? And a lot of times I don't think it will. It's not going to do any good. So all of these aspects of life are being sort of corrupted, perverted, they're being hidden from this public dialogue. And I think it does go back to this control that a very small group of evil, wicked people have in controlling our language. Because when they control our language, they cut off large swaths of reality. And again, apologies for going on too long about that. But
when you control the tongues, you control the hearts and minds. Put it on a t-shirt. That wasn't bad. Proud of myself. There's so much to unpack there. My mind went in a billion different directions as you guys were talking, so forgive me if I don't know what to say here.
Can I be short?
Yeah, go ahead.
Move along. The one thing, I mean, I agree with everything you say, the complexities of it all, but that idea about being negative, it's like, if you don't get hit with that like all the time, it's sort of like, every time it happens, I go, what did I say that was negative? Was it true? Has nothing to do with true. It's how they're feeling. People are being designed and programmed to put the locus and the responsibility for how they feel on you.
yes,
Right?
yes.
You made me feel depressed. Oh my God. Get him off the stage. The issue is so complex.
So language has to be a nesting ground. It has to be this place of coddling. And I have to swaddle you in my language.
Swaddling. Yeah, swaddle. I like that. That's good. I mean, what we understand, I think, is people who are like fighting really hard to be independent thinkers, right? And to pursue the things that interest us, is that we need the room to fail. We need the room to be, mistaken, to go off on a tangent that doesn't lead anywhere. And then to have somebody standing around going, well, I don't know how you got back to that, but whatever, it was kind of good, what you did, because they appreciate that you're in it for the process of it, not to come up with an answer that goes, ding, here's my solution. Because all these things in the program, in the larger program, in the big AI of the, the people AI, there's all these little dings there that waiting for us to ding so that we can, get pushed off into the larger dings, and then all those dings go ding. And then nobody has to think about anything. They really want to kill thought, because thought is like too crazy, man. We can't control your thinking. If we can't, so what do? Well, we, gulag. You end up in a gulag. Come on, face it. But you know the people that are going to be there. I don't know, people, you're going to love them. They're going to be like lower income people who raise themselves up by their bootstraps, self-educated. They did all their own reading. They never finished college, or maybe they did, or whatever, and then later they had. But what I'm saying is, we need to give each other the freedom to fail and to make stupid statements, and not to worry about that, because if you put the locus of your emotions outside of yourself, you're screwed. You're screwed. You will not proceed past some infantile age. That'll be, great. You can pull it off. You can make good money being an infantile, 14-year-old, entrepreneur, whatever. You just got to fight for your right to think.
And the way Julianne was talking about, everybody, we're all clamoring for solutions. So people get aggravated when you identify the problem. But how do you get to a solution if you don't identify the problem? I mean, you have to have the 2 + 2, or you'll never find out that it equals 4, right? So somebody has to point it out. And that thing about being negative, it's like when I was a kid, I would be told, don't, if I'm left home alone, don't answer the phone. I mean, when you answer the phone, don't tell them that your parents aren't home, because you may get kidnapped. I wasn't like, oh, mom, dad, that's negative thinking. I'll never get kidnapped. No, you gotta be direct and honest with people, and there are negative consequences out there. So if you aren't pointing out the possibilities and the places that we may be going if we don't go the right course, then what are you doing in your education? What are you doing in your instructions if you're not instructing people away from the dangers? I'm sorry, Cindy, were you about to say something?
Can I add my 2 cents, please?
Please do.
Okay. So this is a brilliant conversation because we've come full circle back to that outcomes-based education, from which I forgot to mention probably the most important aspect of outcomes-based education, and that is that it is the instruction of how do you feel about 2 + 2, not what is the answer of 2 + 2, what is the sum of 2 + 2. So now, and that speaks directly to the fighting positivity that Julianne described. And that sounds so politically incorrect that I've just understood that it's actually, when somebody's depressed or anxious or is having a hard time, we consider it, in our society and in our culture, it's been ingrained into us through this outcomes-based education or through the neuro-linguistic programming that you have a chemical imbalance in the brain. And I've spoken to this in a few podcasts, and pardon me if you've heard one of those, but there is no test in the world, there is no laboratory test to see what the balance of chemicals are in anyone's brain. So all those people that are being given psychotropics, oh, you need more dopamine or more serotonin or this or that. Well, that's just being plucked right out of the ether to reinforce this idea that being negative is a mental disability. So that's the reaction we're meant to have. But there's what goes unnoticed is how unhealthy that idea is. They're saying that negativity is unhealthy, essentially. And as usual, this is another inversion of reality. I don't know, I can't remember the name of the man who said this, what's the quote I'm thinking of, that to be adjusted in this, to be well adjusted in a, this crazy society is not a marker of health. Can somebody help me with a proper quote?
Yeah,
Anyway.
we know the quote. I can't remember. Artie Lang said something similar, and other people did too.
Yeah. So, and I think that we are disarmed when we think that we're being negative. So I've been fighting this, oh, Cindy, you're so negative. I've been fighting that my whole life. That's nothing new. I'm not, I wasn't taught, or it didn't pass through into me, that it's what I feel that is the truth. It's not about how I feel, it's about what the truth is. So whatever the truth is, I'm going to speak it. And if I don't do that, if I put something away because it's negative and it doesn't feel good, I'm never going to address it. So I think this is part of the subversion, this new ageism of this, positivity, and that being the correct thing and that being the healthy thing means that nobody is grappling with the issues at hand. And anybody who is, and calling it out for what it is, calling a spade, it's a war. They want to kill us. They're depopulating. They're destroying fertility. They're poisoning us. Somehow that those negative concepts shouldn't be spoken of. And if we don't speak about them, we will never, ever address them. And so it looks to me like the little spark that just happened with this conversation with Mark and Julianne is that this is an outcomes-based result. this was intentional. So you either put away that negativity, or you go and you take drugs, psychotropic drugs or recreational drugs, it doesn't matter, something to address it. And in the worst case scenario from a human point of view, and in the best case scenario from a predator's point of view, is somebody who goes and does themselves in because of this. So somebody who says, oh, I can't take this negativity, there's something wrong with me, I'm so sad, there's something wrong with me, I'm so sad, nobody wants to hear about it, nobody understands, I can't talk about it, I'm going to kill myself. This is what PTSD has done to the veterans, and I believe that this is no coincidence that men who have gone to the army, and I'll say women too, just because there must be the women as well, but from what I hear and what I've read, mostly it's men who have served tours, and at the end of it, they are not just disabled because, they got they were shot with a bullet or something, they can't use their arms. No, they're the suicide rate is so high. And that pretty much solves the problem of somebody who sees the problem, acting upon the problem, trying to get retribution or revenge, or trying to rectify the issue. So the people who can see this would be a bit depressed, would be quite negative. And what's the best solution? For them to be either off their heads on drugs or to do themselves in. And therefore, anyone who is thinking this way, that you're feeling negative or depressed or anxious or any of those, negative emotions, you are normal, you are healthy, you are the person that's going to help fix this. Anybody who's in la la land and thinking what a beautiful day it is isn't very helpful to us at the moment. So please, veterans, people with PTSD, anybody who thinks or has been told too often that they are negative or they're depressed and that they need to see, the silver lining. Well, the silver lining is you are healthy. You have a healthy reaction to what is happening in the world. And only through you dwelling on these problems and seeing them every single day and wanting inside you, having this, this compelling, this compulsion to do away with it and fix it. Well, that's the driving force that warriors need, that fighters need, that humans need. So stick around.
Yeah, I've been getting over a respiratory infection, and our modern medicine would tell me that I should be taking cough suppressants, but that coughing, if I don't cough it up, I'm going to have lungs full of mucus. And it's the same thing with your brain. If you don't cough it up, if you don't work it out, if you just suppress it with some sort of chemical, if you just sugarcoat it, then you're never going to get over it. You're never going to get over that hump and deal with it and look it in its fiery red eyes for what it is. And that's what we do with language as well. You're talking about war veterans. George Carlin has a great bit about that, where he's talking about how it went from shell shock, and he goes through all of the changes that they went through, that all the way to post-traumatic stress disorder. So they've kind of cottoned it, they've made it a little bit softer and scientized it to where shell shock just tells you exactly what it is. So that's, I don't know where I was going with that, but like I have so many thoughts going on in my head right now. Like something Julianne said a ways back. I grew up poor myself, and one of those terms that we don't even think about is calling the poor needy. Well, aren't we all fucking needy? Doesn't everybody on earth need something? Why don't we call the rich wanty? Because they just want. So that's how I look at it. How do you combat them? You change their language. They want to call it a jab. No, it's not a jab. It's not just something light and fun. Just playful banter back and forth, a jab. No, it's a stab. I call it a stab. It's not an inoculation. They call it an inoculation because they want you to think that it's innocuous, or maybe they're making you innocuous. You're harmless to them now because you've been inoculated. I don't know. I'm going on a tangent there that I had no clear direction towards. But if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go into the next subject.
I would like to just jump in for 1 second on that, because Cindy raised the idea of the the disaffected youth of children, and our inability to deal with negativity and to basically grapple with our own problems. So we have a kind of gift that we can read some Camus and Kierkegaard, and we can see that these are ancient conflicts, that we're not just suddenly alone. But a child doesn't have that capacity, especially when they may not have adults around them to help. And so, I look at an individual kid who's having problems, and I can't help but see this long cord coming out of them, and it goes back into some centralized computer. And that has a long cord that goes into some centralized computer, and it's not there to help them. It's there to control them. My daughter, she's a psychologist, right? She's a child psychologist, and she's good at what she does. I'm confident she's good because she's a really brilliant person. But when she sees somebody, sometimes she can't see them again for 3 months. No, those kids are being left out to dry, right? They're not being helped. That system is not there to help them. So, we have to sort of realize that, what they're feeling negative about is like, the kicker is that they don't even have a clue how negative it is. They don't have a clue how bad it is. It's sort of like what they're seeing as bad is like a series of innocuous little events that don't add up to something that feels good. Well, when you look at it from the distance that we look at it from, you can go, holy moly, it's like, this is like the freaking, the sword of Damascus, it's coming down on us. So anyway, I'm just saying that about the system not really, making it possible for healing to happen, because healing requires acceptance, and it requires non-judgment. It requires a circle of confidence around other people. And unfortunately, I don't think, if you can do that around your friends and around your family and around your kids, then God bless, because that's a great, great gift. Because again, many people just can't even talk about the subject, right? So they're dealing with big existential issues, but they can't even open the door on them because it's too scary.
Right. And it's a money maker. I mean, broken people are going to make money for the social engineers, and they're going to peddle all of these, mental health fixes, or, economic fixes, or whatever it is. I mean, listening to what Cindy is saying, it just popped into my mind. Like, you have two choices. You're going to own nothing and have no privacy and be happy. You're going to be happy, or you're going to go see your wellness coordinator at your work or your school, or, your church, or wherever it is, and they're going to recommend a mental health regimen for you. So you've got those two choices. You're either happy or you've got a mental health problem. I mean, I'm just saying basically what she said in different words, but, to use the sort of jargon of the day. And, that leaves no room for acquiring that experience that produces genuine wisdom, So like, Mark, what you're saying about these children who can't even, they don't have the time or the tools or any of those factors that would make it possible for them to make sense of the reality of their situation, right? Because they're young and in other circumstances. But, it's having a lifetime of ups and downs and struggling through things and suffering through and having victories and just that working through the process that actually brings clarity, so that we can look back, and say, oh, well, that really is something that's very wrong, it's unjust, or this was a wonderful example of the highest potential of human life. You have to be able to weather those storms, and that does require us to not put our feelings first. But everything now is all about feelings. So when you talk about the metaverse, and it's all about experiences, creating experiences that are pleasant. Now they talk about that, but I have an idea that when we're put into the metaverse, we're actually going to be forced to to relive these very terrible experiences, because it's going to create empathy. So, and especially now, this is a tangent, but it's something that nobody's talking about. So I'm just going to throw it out there. We don't have to discuss it, but I think that, as employers and corporations try to raise their ESG metrics and prove that they have a high equity score, they're going to force people to do these sort of immersive experiences where, you have to go sort of put on your VR goggles and live through a boxcar ride to Auschwitz, or you have to live through a massacre of some sort, and that's going to create these, this sort of fake kind of empathy. Anyway, that's pretty dark, but everything is sort of sold. You have, on the one hand, as we move to the metaverse, the fake reality, it's sold as being something that is pleasant, and it's going to allow you to travel and see new places, and you can try on being an animal or whatever you want to be, and it's all going to be neon colors and wonderful. Which that's fake in and of itself. But then I also think that really what's going to happen when people are moved to the metaverse is it's going to be very dark, and people are going to be terrorized, because that creates the trauma that is going to, create markets for fixing people.
Trauma's the product.
Yeah.
That's what they're focusing on,
Yeah.
I think, the sad thing, this is really sad, because, I know that the person who I am is largely a result of my parents just saying, okay, whatever, as long as you're here and we feel you and are connected to you, then go ahead, take that risk, go there, do that, and they never felt like they were, pushing me or nudging me to do something that, I didn't want to do, because I was so keen on doing what I wanted to do. So I had that. But you can see, maybe, that's what not being broken is, and that's how you use your friends to leverage your not being broken, so that you can laugh at each other and play with each other and goof around. And you can see all, what the last 2 years have been about, is like just undermining those kinds of friendships, really kind of daring friendships, And unfortunately, when you have a mass of broken people, and the system that should be there, parenting system, first of all, but then, the therapy system, second of all, is taxed to the max, and they can't deal with them, then what happens? Then you get virtual therapists. And we can see their ads on Facebook, right? Just use the app. And, where do you think that's going to go? Just like you said, it's going to go into tighter and tighter and tighter boxes. And there's going to be tighter and tighter coordination with drugs that go with that get okayed, and, I'm sorry, but that is the sad scenario. And
when when I think about it, the way Julianne was putting it and the way you're talking about it, Mark, I think about Freud's psychotherapy, how the way that you sit on a couch today and then you dwell on what trauma you went through in your youth or whenever, and then you come back next week and then you talk about that same traumatic event again, and then you keep coming back and coming back, that revolving door of talking about your traumatic event. Excuse me. And so it keeps you in that cycle of trauma, and you're talking about that being imposed upon you in the virtual world, the metaverse or what have you. I started thinking about how these MK Ultra programs can be influenced in that. Especially when you have these wellness programs. Oh, now you need to go through this VR program to help you, but gradually they can work you into this trauma-based mind control programs, and so that they can mass reprogram all of us. So we're getting into a conversation that Cindy was mentioning before the podcast. Would you like to walk us through the age of imagination, what that is and what it entails, Cindy?
That's actually what I was thinking about now. I was looking at the fourth industrial revolution in Wikipedia, trying to distinguish it or to line it up, to contrast it and juxtapose it next to the first and second and third industrial revolutions. Like, what is this trajectory that we're on? And I came across something that I hadn't seen before, and that was in Wikipedia. It described that we were currently in the in the age of information. Like, that would be another way to describe the third industrial revolution, or the time period that we're in now, and that the fourth industrial revolution was being coined as the age of imagination, or imagination age, which fits perfectly with living in the metaverse and all experiences being synthetic or synthesized, or they're fake. Everything's fake. The trauma is fake that they're going to create, to speak to what Julianne was saying. It's fake trauma, it's fake happiness, it's fake money, it's fake clothing, it's fake travel, it's fake relationships. It's all fake. It's all in the imagination. I mean, I really want to say it's all horseshit, in other words. all in our head.
The age of horseshit, that makes sense. I'll sign up.
Totally in our heads, and with opinions and ideas and experiences that aren't even ours. They're implanted. It's scary. It's really scary. It's really sad. Everything that I reflect upon in my own life that's meaningful is something I participated in some way. And the more of me that participated in something, the more I learned, the richer I became inside me. So if it was an experience that that included my brain, my intellect, my heart, my body, we could all sort of think about what that might be. Well, the more of me that was there, the more exciting it was, the more I hold on to that precious memory, the more I want to experience it again, the more I think life is worth living. The less of me that participated in an event, for example, watching a movie, which is something that's rather passive. I wasn't really actively involved. I didn't have to think much. Everything was taught, was said. I was just passive. But that didn't really contribute too much to my life. Books, however, somehow, because I had to apply more of my own imagination, my own thoughts, my own pictures, my own ideas, well, those have more meaning. Now I'm thinking about virtual reality, and some pictures that came to me. No, they didn't. Yeah, they came to me through Facebook. There was another advertisement of Imaginarium in Melbourne, which is some kind of exhibition. And it was basically, so it's an exhibition, and of course they show children participating here, and Imaginarium, the age of imagination, and the pictures that showed what the experience was this empty void space, just walls with some laser lights and some lights, and this child in this vacuum, literally. There was, apparently there may be sounds coming out and lights, so the senses are flooded with superficial lights and superficial sounds, and there's just a child in the middle of this room, or a child sitting in a pod. It was just approximating way too much of the Matrix movie, and I can't understand what kind of experience that is, other than like a vacuum. I think that's like vacuuming out ideas, taking real life out of life. Sorry, I'm really hyper, aren't I? Sorry.
No, we all love that.
And I think that's why they use this term reimagining so much. You're reimagining everything. I mean, just start to watch for it and you'll see it everywhere. And it's also just that, when you think of what the imagination is, I mean, it is our putting together of different stimuli that we've encountered, or different ideas. It's all, it's mind dependent. Well, I mean, I'd have to qualify that a lot, because it kind of depends on what epistemological theory you're working within. But it's all, it puts the onus of reality on the individual mind. And I mean, that's a very scary thing. Like, our mind needs something else to measure itself by and to anchor itself to. We want to know truth. We want to know what's real. We want to know something else that is out there, and we want to know ourselves as well. But there's still some objective reality that draws us and motivates us. But when you start talking about the age of imagination, it throws everything, all of the weight of creating a world, onto the solitary individual. And I mean, I think that's, I think that's too much to bear. And I can't, this example of putting a child in a vacuum, I mean, we have the same sorts of exhibits here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And, it's terrifying. I mean, I have my kids, like, they don't watch a lot of TV. I mean, I let them watch a little bit here and there. But they don't even like the new animation. It's too fast. It hops from here to there. They sort of like some old cartoons that look really 2D and are slow and have, maybe just some interesting mechanical scenes. But the rest of it's all too much, and it taxes the imagination. So on the one hand, I think we have taxed these children of today way too much, and then you're going to put them into this void, and with adults too, and you're going to throw the entire onus of reality on them. And I think this sort of goes back to what Mark is saying about having these weak people who have to have their feelings validated all the time. Our culture, if you can call it that, it flatters people and tells them, oh, you know everything, but it actually robs them of the ability to know, so that they're just stuck feeling their way through life. And I mean, that is, I think that's an example of this sort of very unhealthy type of dissonance or paradox that this new world order is bringing about. There's a type of healthy paradox that's anchored to what's real and what is outside of us, and that gets us closer to understanding. And then there's a very unhealthy paradox that makes us despair of ever having any direction or potential or prospects in the world, and then you're likely to give up, when you're faced with that tension. I mean, it's just like Cindy says, you're, with these veterans, they get to the point where, you just decide it's not worth it anymore.
So can I step in?
Please.
Okay. So I'm militant on the word imagination. I think it is probably the best word that we have to describe what is potentially the most powerful force within the human experience. So imagination breeds everything, right? It breeds our thoughts, it breeds our feelings, how we orient ourselves. It's the product of our upbringing. So in a sense, it lays the groundwork as we move from being children. And, we're, fortunate to be a father and to see little children grow up and then to watch other people's children. It is the most fascinating thing in the world. Okay? There is nothing more fascinating than watching a little kid explore. They know what they're doing. They are the perfect operating system. They appreciate, they see, they consider, they act, right? So that's kind of, when Picasso said, the challenge is being creative like that when you're older, right? That's the challenge, right? So we don't need all this crap, I did my first VR in 1988 or something at the Autodesk Siberia project. You put the freaking helmet on and you see like colors and glitchy, and it was old, of course. Now it's really good. It's like really real lifelike, it's uncannily real, and then you see robots and they have all those cool, but it's just garbage tech. It's just garbage tech. And you can make money off of it, great, And, if you want to be a metaverse programmer, there's a job there for you, if you get the right, certifications, but it's not human, okay? It's not human. What's human is having an imagination, laughing whenever you want, at whatever you want, at whomever you want. And, and if they don't like it, then tell me why, okay? Come back at me. Tell me what's wrong with my view of reality, because it's the only one I got. And it's learned its way through time how to be me. And then I got to sort of go along with it. And sometimes that's difficult. And then sometimes I'm so utterly disappointed in the world. And I'm so utterly, afraid of where the world is going, right? Because it's so non-human. It's so, we are literally having our brains dissolved while we're, other people, maybe me, I don't know, let me know if you think my brain is dissolving. But, a lot of people are literally having their brains dissolved, whether through whatever chemical reactions, emotional reactions, psych trauma, bad food, whatever, like gluten, whatever. They're falling apart. And the only thing that really pulls you out of there is to have this, like I call him, in my thinking, the Minotaur, the motherfucker that just rises up and grabs you by your collar and says, "What is wrong with you? Straighten up. You are a human being. That is a beautiful thing to be. Look at the children. Oh yeah, they cool. They cool. They know. So if it's not good for the children, it's not good for us. And so all the things that we're doing, social distancing and oh my God, the masks, the vaccines for under 5. This is not good for children. This is not good for children. So that's my basic bottom line. It's like, do what's good for the children, and you will feel better about yourself and about the hope for the future and that sort of thing.
I would say that virtual reality has been a thing for way longer than we've recognized it. And I don't just mean the VR headset or anything like that. I mean, like my dad, before he passed away, we were watching these old videos that he did when we went to Disney World when I was like 3 years old. And he's like, I don't remember any of that. Of course you didn't, because you're behind a camcorder the entire time. So he was in between a screen and reality. And for what reason? It doesn't even connect to memory at that point. And I've had conversations with people, and you'll be going on about maybe the false flag of Pearl Harbor, and then they tell you something that they believe is a historical fact, but is something they saw in the movie Pearl Harbor. And I've heard that so many times, where they quote you a fact that's actually from a fictional movie. And our lives have become based on reality, based on a real story, I should say. And it's been happening for so long, so gradually, so under the surface. It's just that now they're throwing the name of it. And that's where we come back to language. When it has a name and you can identify it, then it's, very clear and graspable. But before that, it just crept into our lives very slowly, just like social media. It's just put on our plate right there, and then we are not calling our loved ones. We're not sending them letters. We're not even sending a fucking email. Nobody's writing. And the text messages, just people respond with a simple K or an emoji. It's something that's not even real. Emoji is not real fucking language, people. Quit doing it. And that's gotten to a point of the communication breakdown, where you send a joke to somebody that recognizes you're a jocular person in real life, and here's the punchline in real life, but you send it in text and they don't get it, and they get offended if you don't write LOL, laughy face emoji. And this is a whole breakdown of communication. It's a whole breakdown of the way that we see the world and interact with one another. And it's been happening just step by step, block by block. And we've followed lockstep. We're getting pretty far in length here, so I want to get to this last question here. I think this would be a good way for all three of you to wrap it up. Because Julianne, you posted recently this link. It was about I think it was a test run for a driverless car. And then, of course, it took place on Route 66 on Channel 6. That's the real ism underlying it all, is Satanism. They try to clean it up by calling it communitarianism, but it's Satanism under the surface. So driving, it takes all mental faculties firing on all cylinders at top performance. So if they can eliminate the driver, what's to stop them from creating a peopleless society? Yet I, as a professional driver, I see countless issues, negative consequences, and unforeseeable variables that no tech nerd could possibly predict. It will be catastrophe after catastrophe and interminable gridlock. So, guys, what is the Achilles heel or heels of technocracy? What weaknesses and failings do you notice? I haven't heard from you in a while, Cindy, so I'll go back to you.
So are we addressing the cars, the electric cars, or the smart city?
I was just using that as an example because for me, I see so many flaws in that, but I just, anything you want to address as far as technocracy and the Achilles heel. What can we attack? What weaknesses can we, thrive upon in our movement against it?
Well, we've had all this language to conceal the fact of how ugly it's going to be, right? You know, it's not negative, it's all positive. It's really, really nice having a digital leash that gives you 5 kilometers. It's really, really good to go on holiday with an Oculus headset. It's really, really fun, you know, to have a relationship with somebody you don't know in person, and to just, you know, make it all up in your imagination. I think the Achilles heel is when people decide bugs don't taste as good as steak or real leaves of kale, that the LED lights aren't the same as the sunshine, that swimming in the Mediterranean via a virtual reality gamified experience really isn't any fun. It's not the same. I'm hoping that the Achilles heel doesn't have to rest upon how terrible the reality of the technology is, because, you know, we keep being told this awesome technology, and yet in real life, you know, all these computers are breaking down. Ask anyone in insurance and they'll tell you that the electric vehicles are a drama, because people can't get them started after they've done an update and all this sort of thing. And, you know, the power grid's down and they can't charge their car, and they've got to wait 2 hours to charge the car. So I think reality hopefully is going to creep in. I think reality is the Achilles heel, and hopefully people still remember what a steak tastes like, what it's like to swim in the beach in the sun, and what, you know, sand feels like, you know, between your toes, and, you know, what real love making felt like, and what real relationships, and how just different the world is when it's real and not experienced through a bloody telephone. So I'm hoping the Achilles heel will be people's memories of the true experience. Whether it was good or bad, that experience, it was always better than the lie.
All right, Mark?
Yeah, well, I think the Achilles heel is experience, you know, the quality of the experience that you have is determines so much, you know, it follows from all that came before it, right? Your memories, remember, you know, we're woven of memories, and all our outreach from memory. These are all the muses, you know, in our lives. And we know very well those experiences which incite the muses, you know, the muse of dance or poetry or whatever. These are like comforting experiences. They're beautiful, the good, the true, the beautiful. They pull you back into something that you really want to be with, right? And you know, it's like the first time, like I, you know, you know, I was around Burning Man from the very beginning, but you know, because I had a kid and she went away for the summer and she came back at the very time that it started, I didn't go for quite a few years, but I finally went. And the difference between what I thought it looked like and what it was the difference between having energy moving, pulsing through your body and through your eyes, you know, it's like called prana, right? There's no prana in cyberspace. There's no prana in that. And the difference between an experience with prana and experience without prana is just, it's just huge. You can't even, there's nothing, no comparison to it. It's like, that's it. It's like either we fight for our experience, we fight for our individuality to have the experiences that we want and to pursue the beauty and the truth and the love that we need to make our lives worthwhile, or else we just end up garbage, man. We just end up technology, artifacts of technology, doing whatever we're programmed to do so that we don't draw attention to ourselves. And certainly the social credit scoring system is ultimately going to make sure that we narrow it down. We get you narrowed down so that you don't have any more experiences anymore. And you don't even miss them because you're so messed up, you know? So anyway, you know, I think we just need to stand up for our experience. And and encourage others to do it, even if they don't understand it, even if we're talking into a void like a maniac, because really, as far as I'm concerned, that's what made the human experience worthwhile. And if you take it away, it's not worthwhile anymore. And I'm sure they'll convince us that it was never worthwhile, but it was.
Julianne?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I think we have to remember that these systems, the technocratic systems, are not designed to work well, or the people who are implementing these, they actually don't care if they work well. And the frustration that they cause to us when they don't work well, is just a benefit to them. So I'm always trying to persuade people, like, who say, oh, well, that's not ever going to work. People aren't going to, they're not going to use that system because it's going to be too clunky. Well, what if it's the only thing that you have? And that's how the technocratic trend is going. It's to consolidate all power, all supply chains, all means of production, all ways of thinking and speaking into these standardized universal systems that have no alternative. So I almost want to say, well, there's not an Achilles heel within the technocratic program. But that's not the whole reality of what we're in. So I think there's memory, and that is going to pull at people. I think no matter how hard the resetters try to destroy the soul, they can't destroy the soul. They didn't create it. They can't destroy it. They can damage it very much, and they can really damage it in a lot of people, but they can't do it in all people. So that's gonna pull through, and there are gonna be, there are going to be instances of nobility that inspire. And I think, I've often heard, well, you can't go hoping for a hero in this. And I agree with that. Like, no political figure or alt media figure is going to save us. But there are acts of nobility that each individual person in his or her own sphere can perform. And we're all inspired by the quest for nobility. And, we encounter that. If we don't encounter it, just in our daily lives, then we encounter it in books and in great plays and in works of art. So I think we have to sort of preserve those as best we can, because those do give us these larger horizons to think about. And then, I mean this absolutely sincerely. I'm not being cheeky here, but I think we have to be open to the possibility of miracles, and if I would be a hypocrite if I said that that we need to have these larger horizons of reality, but then I said that there's no such thing as a miracle. And I do believe there are. I mean, so, if we give up on miracles, and then I think we're through. But like I said, I think the human soul is sort of wired, is created to be open to that possibility. And as long as we don't stifle that, then I think that they really are possible.
Maybe we can manifest a miracle by using that empowering word that's been spoken several times here, imagination. I mean, you can't imagine a solution if you don't imagine the problem. You can't imagine the right if you don't imagine the wrong. You can't imagine truth if you don't imagine the lie. And I think we just have to keep imagining our way out of this. And what is imagination based on? It's based on real life experience. It's based on real memories and real connections to the real world. There is no imagination in the virtual reality. There's no imagination in the metaverse. These people who are controlling it are very uncreative people. They're very unimaginative. They use the same playbooks that have been used for millennia now. So I guess that's maybe our defense against them is imagination. Let's imagine our way out of this. And I'm glad you guys came back on. We'll definitely have to do this again sometime. I know you guys are all exhausted through your struggles and all the work that you're doing, and I appreciate what you're doing. And I have to ask you to keep doing what you're doing because it's so important and so powerful for a lot of people out there. Thanks for coming on. I love all of you. My heart to all three of you. All right, take care, everybody.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks, Cindy. Thanks, Mark.
God bless.
Thank you, Julianne. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Josh. My love to all three of you. May we win this. My imagination has a lot of fireworks in it.
All right.
I would like you.
I love that, Julianne. You know, I mean, what Julianne, the note that she left it on, I think is very important. I become much more aware of spiritual realities the last 2 years, much more aware of people's faith, much more aware of higher dimensions. These are all significant. They are not trivial. And our connection to them, and again, through imagination, because if you can't imagine a savior, you will never see one, you know, but that is the kind of gift that we have and that no one can take away from you. That's the beauty of imagination as at its core, is it's inviolable, invincible, and that's where we want to be with that, no matter what happens, no matter how bad it gets.
All right, can everybody give me a hell yeah and a huzzah? No?
Gotta do it together. 1, 2, 3.
Hell yeah and huzzah.
Yeah.
Huzzah.
All right, take care,
See you guys.
everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Not all flowers are innocent. Not all are as beautiful as they appear. Some flowers entice with their nectar just to slam shut its leaves upon the exit. You find no way out as you're digesting in its acidic enzymes. Now you know it was no flower at all. You know it is a Venus flytrap, but it's too late. You're plant food now. Lo, what easier prey than the one who blindly crawls right into the belly of its predator. This is us, trapped flies, but we don't have to be any longer. We can swarm the trap, pry it open, and liberate ourselves from the allure that tricked us into the oven and onto the plate. We can fly free from the belly of the beast and never look back, yet still holding in our memory the beauty that enticed us into the nightmare so that we never fall prey again. Yes, the leaves were so green and the nectar so sweet, heaven on earth for a moment, a brief period of paradise overcome by prepossessing mesmerism. Yet what is a beautiful lie where its reflection shows the ugly truth? Love, peace, happiness. Signing off. Deuces.